Welcome back to the Chargers Check-In. My name is Cecilia, and this week we are previewing the Texans game. We're coming up on the end of the season. This is the toughest stretch for the Chargers. I want to take a look at how the Chargers can do their best to hold up against a formidable Texans defense. So, looking at the Texans, the story of this team is that they have one of the best defenses in the league. Their offense is getting it together at the right time. It hasn't been perfect. CJ Stroud started off pretty slow. The rest of the offense was slow. They've had offensive line issues. We'll get into all this. Ultimately, they're on this crazy win streak because they win at one of the highest margins on average in the NFL because they allow so few points. They're number one in the category of points allowed per game, and it is astounding to be under 17 in that category. They've become one of the hotter teams in the NFL. Impressive win streak, like I said. They get a lot of takeaways, and then on offense, they protect the ball very well. They fumble at one of the lowest rates in the league. So this is not going to be an easy game. The Chargers have a lot that they're working against, but let's take a look, first of all, at the Texans' defense and what the Chargers' approach should be to handling an impressive front, a remarkable secondary against the pass, and overall a really difficult unit to get anything done against. So the Texans are top 5 in both rushing defense and passing defense in terms of yards allowed per game, which is absolutely insane. And when you go through their stats on defense, that's the theme. They are top 5 across the board in almost every category. The closest thing that they have to a weakness is their defense in the red zone. And even then, they're just kind of below average. It's not actually that big of a concern on any other team. You'd go, yeah, we're doing solid here. But because they're so elite in every category, you go, well, maybe that's how we can get them. They're one of the few teams outperforming the Chargers in terms of third down defense, which is not easy to do. In terms of their rushing defense, they do a really good job holding opponents to 4 yards per carry only, which contributes to them keeping opponents to just under 28 minutes of time of possession per game. They tend to possess the ball more than their opponent. For context, the Chargers are only slightly better in that category at just under 27 minutes. It'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. That's definitely a strength on strength. They have some great run defenders on the line. Will Anderson is top 5 in tackles for loss. Danielle Hunter is top 10. They do allow more explosive plays in the run game than they would like. If you can get past or get around the defensive line, that can definitely turn into a big play. We saw that when they played the Bills. That happened more than once. The thing is, they're usually playing with a lead, right? And just because their defense makes it so hard to get anything, if their offense gets anything at all, they're playing with a lead. And so teams just don't get an opportunity to run the ball on them. And that's what they want. They don't want teams to run on them. They want teams to pass. They have one of the best passing defenses in the league, like I said. So that's where they feel the most comfortable. So the Chargers need to get the run game going early, and they need to keep the Texans out of the end zone so that the offense can afford to keep running the ball. They need to get Scott Matlock in motion, get Trevor Penning in motion. I think ideally they would have some kind of fake handoff designed run play for Herbert just to keep the defense honest the rest of the game and do what they can to get the ball to the outside. Getting the ball to the outside on the run is something that works really well for the Chargers. And it's not just because the Chargers struggle to block in the interior. It's also because they have some of the best blocking receivers in the game. We talk all the time. Trey Harris is one of the best. Ladd McConkey does everything he can. Keenan Allen, every one of these receivers does their absolute best at blocking. And I think that the Chargers have to take advantage of that because the offense just doesn't have too many strengths right now. And the Texans defense does not have many weaknesses. Speaking of not having many weaknesses, let's talk about their passing defense. They can really get after the quarterback. They have 2 players in the top 10 in sacks this year, Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. They get a lot of interceptions on great plays from cornerback Kamari Lassiter, safety Jalen Petrie, and safety Kellen Bullock. They all have at least 3 interceptions, and a couple of them have more than that. So Stingley and Lassiter, they both have some of the highest pass breakups in terms of just raw numbers in the NFL. The defense overall, they're only allowing a 58% completion percentage, which is second only to Philly. So they absolutely want teams to try to pass on them because it does not work out in their favor. With this in mind, it makes sense that they rarely blitz. They don't need to. They have guys up front who can get after the quarterback, and they're able to keep these throws ineffective a vast majority of the time. And when the coverage is good, your guys up front have that much more of an advantage. If it takes time for receivers to get open because it's hard to do it against your secondary, then the guys up front have more time to get after the quarterback. But it's worth noting the Cardinals, who have a really bad and dysfunctional offense, who have been starting their backup, Jacoby Brissett, they managed to put up 20 points against them. And most of those points came in the form of touchdowns. So they've been similar to the Chargers in terms of points per game. The difference is the Chargers usually win if they score 20, whereas the Cardinals don't have a defense, so they lost to the Texans 40-20. So one of the ways that the Cardinals were able to put up points was they had Trey McBride block and then roll out for a pass, wait until the defense was spread out, and then allow a quarterback who by then is probably under pressure, just because let's be real about the Cardinals and the Chargers offensive line, make a short throw. You know, a lot of the time when Herbert is under pressure, he is then asked to make a 15-yard pass, make it perfectly, you know, make a 20-yard pass, and try to force things that aren't really there. Let's roll somebody out and have him make a quick, easy pass, maybe barely to the line of scrimmage. Anything you can do to spread out the defense ahead of time would be ideal for this. So this could be a game where you get a lot of receivers on the field and you alternate between really heavy sets and really spread out personnel, because when you do that, the defense doesn't know what to be prepared for. And we've seen how KLS has emerged a bit. Let's get him on the field. He can be a field stretcher. Anything we can do to spread out this secondary is going to be ideal, because, you know, they don't miss many tackles. The Texans defense do not miss many tackles, so you need to do what you can to get these guys in space, ideally one-on-one, instead of just letting the Texan defense completely overwhelm them. So the Chargers don't have a Trey McBride, but they do have an Aireontae Gadsden, who is emerging as one of the top rookie tight ends, and two running backs who are good at both blocking and receiving. So they have more than enough to work with this. And, you know, just like I said before the Cowboys game, I don't want to see too many early, just straight up drop back and pass. That's not realistic. Let's roll Herbert out, play action, run the ball a lot. Anything you can do to keep Herbert upright, especially early in the game, let him get comfortable, let him get a feel for the game. And then if you want to do some pocket passing, that's when it makes sense. And even then, easy options are everything. At this point, I'm kind of giving up on, is Greg Roman going to have a lot of quick game? We've seen it in different spurts throughout the season, but just not often enough. So I think having somebody chip then roll out, or block and then roll out, or block if they need to, and if no one's there to block, just chip someone and roll. I think that would be their best approach to getting those chunk yardage plays that they need in the air. I also think we need to see Ladd McConkey get more involved. He hasn't had a great season. He, I believe, only had one game over 100 yards. You know, he needs to be really involved for the rest of the year, because this offseason, the Chargers are going to have a decision to make regarding Keenan Allen, who is their other slot guy. And Keenan Allen's getting older, and ideally, Ladd would kind of take his place as the go-to guy for Justin Herbert, and that's just not what he's been this year. But he's also had really good moments. We remember who he was last year, so he definitely can be that. And so the Chargers need to find out while they can, is he going to be who we want him to be in the future, or do we need to bring Keenan Allen back? And you could kind of say the same thing with Trey Harris. They play different roles, but it's like, do we have enough in the passing game? And Trey Harris, he only looks better and better every time he's out there on the field. So he needs to be involved in this attack, and to that point, he needs to be involved just because he is one of their best options. We need both of them at their best and ready to go for the postseason. So in terms of how the Chargers win this game needs to be ugly for the Chargers to win. It needs to be low scoring. Field goals need to be hard to come by. Everything needs to be really ugly and muddy, and there need to be a lot of punts. This needs to be a game that goes by really fast, because neither team is really airing it out. So let's keep that in mind when we look at the Texans offense, which generally gets about 23 points per game over the course of the whole season, but they have improved more recently. CJ Stroud, he started off the season pretty poorly, spent some time unable to play because of injuries, and the whole offense was really struggling with him, and they started to turn things around. The fact that they're in playoff contention at all is pretty impressive, considering, they started 0-3. That's not an easy deficit to overcome, but they've done it. They've had a heck of a win streak going, and they have had some serious offensive line issues. I think at the beginning of the year, you'd probably put their offensive line in the bottom 5. They've started to figure it out more recently. They've had a lot of tight end chips and extra blockers in the backfield to deal with it, and I think it's helped CJ Stroud get more comfortable in the pocket, because CJ Stroud is really a pocket passer. That's where he wants to be. That's where he excels. They do struggle on third downs, and that hasn't improved much, even though the offense overall has improved a lot. In that case, they're going to be going against a strength of the Chargers defense, because Chargers defense are a tough third down situation, and they need to be at their best in these situations early in the drive. Get the Texans off the field before they're in field goal range, because let's be real, the Chargers offense are going to have a hard time getting touchdowns, and so field goals need to come at a premium. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the run game. They run the ball only 42% of the time. They do not like to run the ball in the end zone. They really do not trust their running backs in the end zone, and they're averaging only 4 yards per carry, which isn't great, and it's been even lower as of late. And the running back duo is Woody Marks and Nick Chubb. Neither is averaging over 50 yards per game, and the offensive line cannot run block. They have one of the lowest yards before contact in the NFL, which just means that their running backs are having to deal with hit after hit behind the line or right at the line. They don't have any space to work with to make people miss. They run inside zone a lot, despite being one of the least efficient teams at it. This is a team that wants to pass the ball, and in the last few games, their passing offense has looked really good. But at some point, you do have to run, and the Chargers defense does a really good job of forcing teams to run the ball because they are so good at defending the pass. So their completion percentage as of late is similar to the Chargers. It's not great. The defense has to get pressure on CJ Stroud. They have to get him uncomfortable, and they have to make it so that the Texans kind of have no choice but to run, and clearly the Texans value the time of possession. They're not going to want to just hand it away just because the Chargers defense aren't letting them pass. So the best way to do this is to have Thule, Mack, and Owe all on the field at once, especially on second down, because that's how you can create those third and long situations. When the three of them are on the field at once, the pressure rate jumps up to the 50s, which is unreal. Thule is so good going against these interior players. He flushes quarterbacks out of the pocket and stops them from scrambling up the middle because he's quick. Odafe Owe is great at chasing a quarterback down. Khalil Mack does a great job collapsing his side of the pocket even through double teams. I wouldn't be shocked if Khalil Mack ended up having a really big game because it feels like game after game, he does all the dirty work. He takes up double teams, he gets the run stops, and then someone else gets the sacks, but he's been getting pressure at a really impressive rate. So I would not be surprised if Matt continues that streak and we see him get some sacks this time. I think this approach really combines to create a nightmare scenario for quarterbacks unless they have a quick pass option, and that hasn't really been the Texans' approach. They do like to do short passes, which makes sense given the running back struggles, but it's not really, snap the ball, 3 steps back, fire. It's more so waiting for a play to develop, seeing that everyone's covered, and going to a check down option. Something I wish the Chargers would do. In terms of their receivers, they do have a lot of good options. Nico Collins has been a big threat around the whole field. He's often catching passes at the second level. He has had multiple 2-touchdown games this year, and Dalton Schultz is the more common target, typically in shorter field, but he is a red zone threat. He's a tight end. Chargers have struggled a little bit against tight ends in the red zone, so hopefully they can keep that under control. Jawar Jordan hasn't been a consistent threat, but he did get over 100 yards in that game against the Cardinals. He got a lot after the catch. He can be kind of shifty. So, the offense isn't anything to overlook. Obviously, we talked about we want this to be an ugly defense first game, but it's still going to be a challenge for the defense. CJ Stroud has a lot of solid options. I think the Chargers have to disrupt him early. The edge rushers have to make passing from the pocket really difficult, really uncomfortable. They already don't want to run the ball, so let's shut that down early and let's let our offense have as many opportunities as possible because they're going to need it. And of course, to win, Cameron Dicker has to keep being money, and I have no doubt that he will. So in general, I think this is a good preview as to what the playoffs are going to be like, for better or worse, right? Because most playoff teams have good defenses. Most playoff teams aren't just entirely on one side of the ball like the Chargers have been. So how can you play a more balanced attack? How do you overcome that? And, the Chargers and Greg Roman have to show that they are going to give Justin Herbert a real chance, that they're going to give him options, and their solution cannot just be, okay, Justin Herbert, go be a superhero, because he can't possibly get it done in every single game. So this will be a good test for that. I think this is a great opportunity for the defense to shine and to let Cam Dicker get as many points as possible. And, I think the Chargers have a real chance in this one. And as we lead up to this game, I'm going to do my best to not think about how the Chargers were eliminated from the playoffs last year. There's not much of this season left, so I'm trying to enjoy it while I can. Shout out to my members. Really appreciate you guys. I'm going to have more exclusive content for you guys soon, and I'm hoping that as the draft approaches, I can get 1 or 2 exclusive member videos per month in there. So really appreciate you guys. Thanks for being here. Please like and subscribe if you've liked what you've seen, and I will see you guys next time.